The air in Singapore in March of 1942 is a physical weight, a humid blanket woven from the smells of victory and decay. It carries the scent of cordite from spent cartridges, the sweet rot of jungle vegetation, and the sharp metallic tang of aviation fuel. The rising sun flag hangs limp and heavy against a sky bleached white by the heat, its crimson circle a stark wound above the captured RAF Seletar Air Base. Here, shrapnel-scarred palm trees droop over hangars pockmarked by machine gun fire, their metallic skins sweating in the oppressive heat. The constant high-pitched drone of cicadas is the new sound of peace, a fragile layer over the distant shouts of drills and the lingering ghosts of battle. This is a conquered space, a place where one empire's machinery has fallen silent, waiting to be dissected by another. But inside one of these cavernous, dimly lit hangars, the chaos of the tropics and the war is held at bay. Here a pocket of intense, sterile focus defies the humidity. The air is different, cleaner, sharper, smelling of oil and polished steel. It is a temporary temple of engineering, a captured ground zero where the soul of an enemy is being reverse-engineered. On a vast white canvas spread across the concrete floor, gleaming metal parts are laid out in perfect, almost surgical order. It is a machine in pieces, an engine dismembered, its heart exposed to the quiet scrutiny of its conquerors. How can a single object, taken from a fallen aircraft, hold the key to an empire's fate? If you believe the secrets of history are often hidden in the smallest of details, comment with the word details below. At the center of this sacred space stands Kenji Tanaka, a lead aeronautical engineer from the Nakajima Aircraft Company. He is not a soldier, but a different kind of warrior. His battlefield is measured in micrometers, his weapons are blueprints and calipers, and his faith lies in the elegant logic of physics. In his late 30s, he moves with a quiet intensity, his focus absolute. His patriotism is not the loud, fervent nationalism of the military commanders who now occupy this base. It is a deeper, more profound belief in Japanese ingenuity. He is a disciple of monozukuri, the spiritual art of craftsmanship, convinced that the soul of the Yamato people can forge a machine superior to any other on Earth, securing dominion of the skies through sheer perfection. His holy grail has just been delivered. A salvage team, wresting it from the jungle's grip, brought forth a nearly intact Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the heart of a Hawker Hurricane that had torn a scar through the canopy before crashing. For Kenji and his small elite team, it is not just a piece of enemy technology. It is a sacred artifact, a puzzle box containing the secrets of British power. They spend a week in a state of reverent concentration, painstakingly disassembling it. Each component is carefully detached, cleaned of mud and oil, measured with excruciating precision, and laid out in its designated spot on the white canvas. It is a ritual, an autopsy of a mechanical god, performed under the silent, watchful eyes of the hangar's high, dark rafters. The moment of rupture is not a sudden explosion, but a dawning, creeping realization that chills the humid air. As the last gleaming piston is gently placed in its sequence, the full picture emerges. The Merlin engine lies before them, not as a singular masterpiece, but as a collection of perfectly standardized, brutally efficient parts. There is an almost insulting lack of artisanal flourish, no trace of a master's hand. Every gear, every bearing, every valve seems to have been born from a mold, identical to 1,000 others. It is a machine designed not by an artist, but by a committee of relentless pragmatists. The engine's soul, which Kenji had expected to be a complex and beautiful poem of engineering, is instead a cold, hard statement of industrial logic. Staring down at the dismembered heart of his enemy, Kenji feels the first tremor of a profound and terrifying doubt. This was not the creation he had envisioned. The British were not fighting with handcrafted swords, but with hammers forged in an impossibly vast and efficient fire. Each perfectly milled surface, each stamped serial number, whispered a horrifying truth that had nothing to do with warrior spirit or national pride. This engine was not built to be unique. It was built to be numerous. It was a disposable, replaceable heart for a disposable, replaceable war machine. And in that moment, Kenji Tanaka understood he was not just looking at an engine. He was looking at the blueprint of a war he was only just beginning to comprehend. A cold wave of disappointment washes over Kenji, a feeling so alien it momentarily eclipses his professional curiosity. He runs a gloved finger over a connecting rod, its surface perfectly machined, cool and utterly impersonal. He had prepared himself to discover the subtle signature of a master craftsman, a unique file mark, a hand-beveled edge, the kind of beautiful imperfections that are, in fact, the hallmarks of artisanal perfection. But there is nothing. The part is flawless in a way that feels sterile, machine-born. His team stands silent, their initial reverence replaced by a quiet confusion. They had come here for a dialogue with a genius, an intellectual wrestling match with a rival artist. Instead, they are confronted with a cold, hard monologue of industrial might. This Merlin engine does not whisper tales of a proud workshop. It screams the deafening roar of a factory floor. His gaze settles on a small stamped metal plate riveted to the crankcase. The numbers are not elegantly engraved, but pressed into the metal with brutal force, a functional scar rather than an artist's signature. The serial number is shockingly high, a simple fact that plants a seed of profound unease in his logical, orderly mind. It is the philosophy behind this act that truly disturbs him. In Japan, a master's work is signed, given a name imbued with a spirit that transcends its function. This number is a mark of inventory, a cold designation for a replaceable unit. It suggests this engine is not a singular creation to be cherished, but merely one in a vast, unending series. The metal plate is a tombstone and a birth certificate all at once, marking this engine's place in a lineage he cannot comprehend. The question shifts from how this engine was built to a far more terrifying one. How many? Measure it again, Kenji commands, his voice tight, betraying a flicker of desperation he immediately regrets showing. He cannot accept this conclusion. He believes there must be a subtle variation, a human element his tools have missed, a secret hidden within the tolerances. For 2 days, the hangar is filled with the soft metallic clicks of calipers and micrometers. His team works with renewed, almost frantic precision, measuring every piston, every camshaft lobe, every gear tooth. They are searching for the soul of the machine in the thousandths of an inch. But the numbers that come back are a relentless, monotonous chorus of conformity. Each component is a perfect echo of the next. The engine is not just standardized. It is a testament to a level of manufacturing consistency that feels alien, almost inhuman. They are not dissecting a machine. They are proving a theorem of mass production. And Kenji is beginning to fear its final, chilling conclusion. The investigation moves deeper from form to substance, from the geometry of the parts to the very elements they are made of. He sends a turbine blade from the supercharger, the engine's mechanical lung, the key to its high-altitude power, to a makeshift field lab. The results come back on a single sheet of paper that feels heavier than a steel ingot in his hand. The blade is forged from a nickel-chromium alloy of astonishing purity and strength. Kenji knows the state of Japan's own metallurgy. He knows the desperate search for nickel, the strained supply lines, the compromises made on the factory floor. To produce an alloy this refined in small quantities for a prototype was one thing. But to mass-produce it, to equip thousands of engines with it, spoke of a resource base and a logistical chain that was beyond his empire's grasp. The Merlin's strength wasn't just in its design. It was in the very earth its creators commanded. Standing under the single lamp in the humid darkness, Kenji closes his eyes. He is no longer in a Singapore hangar. He is in a place he has never seen, yet now understands with perfect, horrifying clarity. He sees a factory not built of wood and paper, but of brick and steel, stretching for miles under a grey, smoky sky. He hears the percussive rhythm of 1,000 power hammers, feels the floor tremble with the force of colossal presses. He sees rivers of molten metal, conveyor belts carrying gleaming parts, and an army of workers, men and women, moving with a purpose that is not spiritual, but relentlessly practical. This engine was not born of quiet contemplation in a master's dojo. It was forged in a crucible of organized, impersonal, and seemingly limitless power. The Merlin is not an artifact. It is an emissary from this industrial world, a world Japan has challenged, but does not truly comprehend. The initial confusion has now curdled into a cold, intellectual dread. It settles in his stomach like a shard of metal, sharp and heavy. He looks at the elegant, dissected parts on the white canvas, and they no longer seem like the heart of a British fighter. They feel like the bones of a prophecy. In his mind he sees the beautiful lightweight A6M0 fighter, his nation's pride. It is a masterpiece of agility and grace, a samurai's sword crafted with soul and precision. But this Merlin? This is something else entirely. It is a blacksmith's hammer. It is crude in its philosophy, brutally simple in its purpose, and designed to be made by the thousands. The mystery is no longer technical. A profound and treasonous question begins to form in his mind, a question that will haunt his every calculation from this moment on. How do you fight a storm of hammers with a single, perfect sword? The investigation mutates from a professional exercise into a feverish obsession. The hangar, once a temple of engineering reverence, becomes a lonely interrogation room where Kenji is both detective and prisoner. Under the harsh glare of a single low-hanging lamp that carves a circle of light from the oppressive darkness, he and his team work through the humid nights. The rhythmic chirping of cicadas outside feels like the ticking of an unseen clock. His focus narrows to the small, unassuming data plate riveted to the crankcase. It is here, in these brutally stamped digits, that the cold monologue of the factory begins. The numbers are clean, precise, and devoid of any artistry. They are not a signature. They are an indictment, a clue that points far beyond the steel and aluminum laid out before him, towards a source of power he cannot yet quantify, but is beginning to viscerally fear. The serial number becomes the first thread he pulls in a vast and terrifying tapestry. He dispatches his junior engineers to sift through piles of captured British documents, shipping manifests from the docks, charred fragments of pilot logbooks, and dry intelligence reports that had been previously dismissed as mundane. For days they are no longer engineers, but archivists of an industrial ghost. They plot the captured numbers on a large blackboard, and a horrifying picture begins to emerge. The numbers are not just high. They are sequential, relentless, and accelerating. What they are charting is not a production line, but a flood. This single Merlin engine, their prized trophy wrested from the jungle, is revealed to be nothing more than a single, anonymous drop of water in a vast flowing river of steel, a river whose source lies somewhere beyond the horizon, in a world operating on a scale they had never dared to imagine. His inquiry then burrows deeper, past the numbers, and into the very substance of the machine. The supercharger's turbine blade, the component that gave the Merlin its crucial high-altitude breath, becomes the new object of his fixation. Under a microscope, its internal structure is flawless. The metallurgical analysis confirms his worst fears. It is a nickel-chromium superalloy of a purity and tensile strength that is, for Japan, the stuff of laboratory dreams. He thinks of the strained supply lines, the desperate search for nickel, the constant compromises his colleagues at Nakajima must make. To forge this material for a single prototype was a challenge. To mass-produce it for thousands of engines was an act of industrial alchemy. The blade is no longer just a piece of metal. It is a testament to a command of geology, a dominion over the raw elements of the earth that feels more decisive than any military victory. This material superiority forces Kenji to reconsider the engine's entire philosophy. He begins to see a genius that is not aesthetic, but brutally pragmatic. The Merlin was not designed to be a masterpiece. It was designed to be made. He sees how the bolts are standardized, how the components are grouped into easily replaceable modules. He imagines a young, grease-stained mechanic in a muddy English airfield with minimal training, swapping out a damaged cylinder bank in a matter of hours. The engine is built for the chaos of war, for imperfection, for repair by ordinary hands. He contrasts this with the beautiful A6M0, a marvel of lightweight precision that demands a master's touch to maintain. The Merlin is a tool for the masses. The Zero is an artist's sword. And in this war, he starts to suspect, the sheer volume of tools will inevitably overwhelm the elegance of the sword. The weight of this unfolding truth begins to isolate him. The constant low drone of a passing Allied reconnaissance plane, once a mere nuisance, now sounds like a personal taunt. Each engine beat a reminder of the thousands more just like it. His sleep is fractured by visions not of aerial combat, but of colossal factories stretching to the horizon, their smokestacks breathing a dark prophecy into a grey sky. He fills notebooks with calculations, trying to quantify the abyss opening before him. His own team, loyal and brilliant, senses his growing despair but cannot grasp its source. To them, this is still an engineering problem to be solved. To Kenji, it has become a philosophical one. He is burdened with a secret that feels like treason. The dawning certainty that the spirit of Monozukuri, the very soul of his nation's strength, is irrelevant. The external world intrudes upon his grim sanctuary in the form of Colonel Yamamoto, the garrison's liaison officer. The colonel strides into the hangar, his boots echoing on the concrete, his face a mask of impatient authority. He glances dismissively at the meticulously arranged parts and the chalk-dusted blackboard. "Tanaka-san," he says, his voice sharp, "Tokyo grows impatient. We need a weapon, not a museum exhibit. When will I have a Japanese Merlin?" Kenji tries to explain the complexities, the material challenges, the industrial implications. But his words are met with a cold stare. To the colonel, this is a matter of will, of the Yamato spirit. Kenji's caution is misinterpreted as a lack of fighting resolve. He is trapped between a military command that demands a simple answer and a machine that is screaming a complex and devastating truth. After the colonel leaves, a profound silence settles back over the hangar, heavier than before. Kenji stands alone before the dissected engine. The parts on the white canvas no longer look like components of a machine. They feel like letters, hieroglyphs from an alien civilization, and he is the unwilling translator of their terrible message. Each gear, each piston, each bearing is a word in a sentence that is slowly, inexorably taking shape in his mind. The victory at Singapore, the triumphant flags, the arrogance of men like Yamamoto, all of it feels like a fleeting dream. Here on this concrete floor lies the reality. He has been tasked with copying the enemy's heart, but in doing so, he has discovered the blueprint of a war that cannot be won by spirit or by honor, but only by the cold, brutal arithmetic of the factory floor. The weight of his findings presses down on Kenji, a force more oppressive than the tropical humidity. The hangar has transformed from a laboratory into a solitary confinement cell. The white canvas on the floor a stark page onto which an unbearable truth has been written. He finds himself tracing the flow of production in his mind, from the iron ore mines of some distant, unseen continent to the roaring furnaces, the colossal stamping presses, and finally to this single perfect piston in his hand. It is a journey of relentless, impersonal logic. The spirit of Monozukuri, the patient, soulful craft he had dedicated his life to, feels fragile, almost irrelevant in the face of this industrial behemoth. His calculations on the blackboard are no longer about engineering tolerances. They are about the crushing arithmetic of attrition, a formula for a war his nation was not equipped to fight. The quiet of his grim contemplation is shattered by the sharp, rhythmic click of military boots on concrete. Colonel Yamamoto strides into the circle of light, his presence sucking the air from the space. He is a man carved from certainty, his uniform immaculate despite the heat, his gaze sharp and impatient. He does not see a complex puzzle being solved. He sees a delay. His eyes sweep over the dissected engine parts with a dismissive air, as if they were the bones of a small animal. Interesting for a moment, but ultimately insignificant. To the colonel, this engine is a symbol to be conquered and repurposed, not a text to be read and understood. He represents the will of an empire that believes its spirit is its greatest weapon. An empire that has no patience for the hesitant. Complicated language of science. Your progress is slow. Tanaka-san. Yamamoto begins, his voice cutting through the silence. Tokyo asks for results. They ask for a Japanese Merlin to sweep the skies of the Australians and Americans. Instead, I see an engine in pieces and a board full of numbers. Kenji attempts to articulate the scale of his discovery, to translate the engine's silent testimony. He speaks of the nickel-chromium alloys, the impossibly high serial numbers, the philosophy of mass production. He tries to explain that to copy the Merlin is not enough. One must also copy the industrial civilization that birthed it. But his words, precise and logical, are like stones dropped into a deep well. They disappear without an echo. The colonel's face remains a mask of stone, his mind closed to any truth that does not align with the narrative of inevitable victory. Yamamoto lets out a short, sharp sigh of frustration. Spirit, Tanaka-san. That is what you are missing. The spirit of the Yamato people. Did our spirit not conquer this fortress? Did our pilots in their superior machines not drive the British from the sky? He gestures vaguely towards the darkness outside the hangar. They have factories, yes. They have numbers. We have something they cannot measure. A will to die for our emperor. That is our supreme weapon. Your job is not to admire their methods, but to give our warriors a sharper sword. Stop thinking and start building. He turns and leaves as abruptly as he arrived, his final command hanging in the air like cordite smoke, an order that is both impossible and absolute. Kenji is left alone, the silence now ringing with the force of their mutual incomprehension. A profound and dangerous solitude envelops Kenji in the wake of the colonel's departure. He feels utterly adrift, caught between two irreconcilable worlds. One is the world of imperial dogma, of spiritual strength and honorable sacrifice, the world represented by Yamamoto's unyielding certainty. The other is the world of physical laws, of material constraints and logistical realities, the world screaming silently from every component of the Merlin engine. For the first time, he feels a tremor of doubt, not in his calculations but in his own identity. Was his meticulous search for truth a form of disloyalty? Was the intellectual clarity he so valued merely a guise for a lack of fighting spirit? He looks at the beautiful, logical layout of the engine parts and sees not an enemy machine, but the only honest thing in the room. His gaze falls upon a single connecting rod, its surface machined to a perfect impersonal smoothness. He picks it up. It is cool and heavy, a solid piece of reality in a world that feels increasingly like a fever dream. He runs his thumb over its flawless surface and understands. The colonel's faith is a powerful force, but it cannot mine nickel. The Yamato spirit is undeniable, but it cannot forge chromium steel on an industrial scale. The will of the emperor is absolute, but it cannot alter the laws of thermodynamics. This piece of metal in his hand is not a weapon, it is an argument. It is the conclusion of a syllogism that begins with geology and ends in the sky over Tokyo. His resistance is not to the colonel, but to the grand, beautiful and fatal illusion his entire nation has embraced. With a newfound, chilling sense of purpose, Kenji turns back to the blackboard. The confrontation has not broken him. It has clarified his mission. He understands now that he cannot simply replicate the engine. He must translate its message into a language even a man like Yamamoto cannot ignore. He wipes away the complex equations and metallurgical notes. His task is no longer to reverse engineer a machine, but to chart the dimensions of their coming ruin. He needs a number. One number so large, so stark, so undeniable, that it could shatter the myth of spiritual supremacy. He picks up a fresh piece of chalk, the quiet snap as it touches the slate the only sound in the vast silent hangar. He is about to write the first digit of a prophecy. The confrontation with Colonel Yamamoto acts not as a deterrent, but as a catalyst, forging Kenji's despair into a cold, singular purpose. He is no longer an engineer tasked with replication. He has become a prophet, unwillingly chosen to interpret the terrible oracle laid out in steel and aluminum before him. The mission is no longer to build a Japanese Merlin, but to prove with the irrefutable logic of mathematics why such a task is meaningless. He turns back to the blackboard, wiping away the intricate schematics and metallurgical formulas. In their place, he begins to draw a new kind of diagram, not of an engine, but of an ecosystem. He charts the flow of resources, the curve of production, the cold, hard logistics of a global war machine. He is an anatomist dissecting a leviathan, and he must present its impossible scale to men who only see the tooth and the claw. His first variable is the most tangible, the serial numbers. He gathers his team, their faces drawn and pale in the lamplight, and directs them to plot every recovered number on a single massive graph. For 2 days the hangar is a place of silent, feverish accounting. The chalk dust hangs in the humid air like a fine mist as they connect the dots gleaned from captured manifests, wreckage reports, and intelligence fragments. What emerges on the blackboard is not a steady, linear progression, but a terrifying exponential curve, a line that sweeps upward toward an asymptote of infinity. Each point on the graph is a new factory coming online, a new shift being added, a new continent being brought into the war effort. The numbers are no longer just identifiers. They are the rhythmic, accelerating pulse of an industrial heart so vast it spans oceans. From this pulse, his investigation moves to the lifeblood, the raw materials. He stares again at the metallurgical report for the supercharger blade, its nickel-chromium composition, a testament to an alchemical mastery he can only admire. But now he looks past the quality to the quantity. He begins a new calculation, a grim exercise in industrial arithmetic. He estimates the mass of nickel in a single blade, multiplies it by the number of engines suggested by the serial numbers, and arrives at a tonnage that seems impossible. He knows Japan's desperate, frantic search for these same elements. He visualizes the globe, seeing the Allied shipping lanes not as lines of attack, but as colossal arteries, pumping the mineral wealth of entire continents into the furnaces of Britain and America. This engine is not just an assembly of parts. It is a geological event, a weapon forged from the very crust of the earth. The final and most profound piece of the puzzle is the philosophy. Kenji returns to the elegant simplicity of the engine's modular design. He sees it now not as a lack of artistry, but as the ultimate expression of a different kind of genius, the genius of systems. He calculates the man-hours required for a field repair, the ease with which a semi-skilled mechanic could swap out a damaged cylinder bank. He contrasts this with the exquisite temperamental Zero, a machine that demands the delicate touch of a master. The Allies, he realizes, have not built a weapon for heroes. They have built a system that weaponizes the common man. Their strength lies not in the singular perfection of the sword, but in the endless, redundant supply of hammers and the ordinary hands that can wield them. It is a philosophy that values resilience over brilliance, a terrifyingly practical approach to a war of attrition. As a tropical thunderstorm begins to brew, its distant rumbles shaking the hangar's thin metal walls, Kenji synthesizes his findings. The air grows thick and electric, mirroring the storm of calculation in his mind. He stands before the blackboard, a lone figure in a circle of light, chalk moving with a frantic, desperate precision. He multiplies the production curve by the material flow, factoring in the efficiency of the modular design. The numbers on the board grow, merging into a single, terrifying equation. The rhythmic scrape of chalk on slate is the only sound, a counterpoint to the rising fury of the storm outside. He is no longer just solving an engineering problem. He is writing a death sentence, one digit at a time, giving mathematical form to the abstract dread that has consumed him for weeks. The storm breaks. Rain lashes against the corrugated iron roof in a deafening torrent, and a flash of lightning momentarily bleaches the hangar in a stark, ghostly white. In that instant of cold, clear light, Kenji steps back. He has the answer. He lifts the chalk, its tip trembling slightly, and writes the final number at the bottom of the board. He circles it, the chalk snapping under the sudden pressure of his hand. 30,000. An estimate, a projection, but in his soul he knows it to be true. 30,000 Merlin engines in a single year. The number hangs there, stark and absolute, a silent monument to a scale of power that renders courage, spirit, and honor tragically irrelevant. It is the cold, brutal arithmetic of the factory floor, and it is the final word in the argument of this war. In the sudden lull between claps of thunder, a new sound penetrates the roar of the rain. It is a low, dissonant drone, growing steadily from the darkness, a sound not of one engine but of many, their beats unsynchronized, a chorus of industrial might moving through the night sky. He recognizes it instantly, a flight of RAF Lancaster bombers. The sound is no longer an abstract threat. It is the physical manifestation of his math, the living, breathing proof of the number on the board. Each engine beat is a tick of a clock, counting down to his nation's ruin. Kenji looks from the beautiful dissected machine on the floor to the impossible number on the board, and out into the storm-tossed, engine-filled darkness. He has found the enemy's secret, only to realize it was a mirror reflecting his own empire's doom. The drone of the bombers is not a sound. It is a physical presence, a vibration that travels through the damp air, through the hangar's corrugated metal skin, and into the very marrow of Kenji's bones. It is the sound of the number on the blackboard made real, a chorus of 30,000 voices singing a hymn of industrial power. Each unsynchronized engine beat is a hammer blow, forging a new reality in the night sky. The rain and thunder of the tropical storm are now a distant natural choir, utterly insignificant next to this man-made storm passing overhead. This is the sound he has been searching for in the silence of his calculations, the sound of the factory floor taking flight. It is the sound of the war as it truly is, not as he had imagined it. It is the sound of the abyss, and it is calling from above. He does not move. He stands as a statue in the center of his own terrible trinity, the dissected machine on the floor, the impossible number on the board, and the living equation roaring through the sky. In this moment, the frantic tension that has consumed him for weeks dissolves not into panic but into a profound and chilling serenity. There is no more doubt to wrestle with, no more variables to check. The theorem has been stated, the proof has been presented, and the conclusion is now absolute. His mind, a place that has always found comfort in logic and order, now finds a strange peace in this devastating clarity. He has sought the truth with the full force of his intellect, and the truth has answered. He is no longer an engineer. He is a witness to a verdict that has already been passed. With a strange, detached calm, his gaze drifts down to the Merlin parts laid out on the white canvas. They are no longer components of an enemy weapon. They are not a puzzle to be solved, or a design to be copied. He sees them now as something else entirely, relics. They are the beautiful, intricate bones of a world that is about to be washed away. He thinks of his own creation, the elegant A6M0, a marvel of lightweight precision and a testament to the soul of Japanese craftsmanship. In his mind's eye, he sees it not as a predator, but as a single perfect cherry blossom, exquisite and doomed, caught in the path of an unstoppable industrial glacier. The bombers overhead are not just machines. They are that glacier, a moving mountain of steel and fire, indifferent to the beauty it is about to crush. The faces of his own pilots flash in his mind, young, confident men, filled with the fire of the Yamato spirit. Men who believe, as he once did, that their will and their skill are the ultimate weapons. He sees them as he has always seen them, as modern samurai wielding their perfect machines like ancestral swords. But now the image is layered with a profound and unbearable tragedy. He sees them flying into the teeth of this storm, their courage a magnificent but futile gesture. Their honor is a candle in a hurricane. The spirit Colonel Yamamoto spoke of is real, powerful, and beautiful, but it cannot stop a river of steel. It cannot rewrite the cold arithmetic of the sky. In this moment of clarity, Kenji's heart breaks not for himself, but for the brave men who will be sacrificed on the altar of a beautiful, fatal illusion. He turns his head slowly, looking back at the blackboard. The number Tizu 30,000 das seems to glow in the dim light, a stark white wound against the black slate. It is more than a number. It is a law of this new world, a physical constant as undeniable as gravity. It is the measure of a power that does not value artistry, that does not recognize spirit, that simply is. It is the weight of continents, the heat of 1,000 furnaces, the relentless rhythm of 1,000,000 working hands, all distilled into 5 silent digits. He feels a solitude so profound it is like a physical cold. He has crossed an intellectual horizon and can never go back. He is a man who now speaks a language no one else around him can understand, burdened with the knowledge of a future that is already written in the enemy's order books. The drone of the bombers finally begins to fade, a receding tide of sound leaving behind a silence that is heavier and more complete than before. Kenji takes a single step forward and stoops to pick up a piston from the canvas. It is cool and dense, a solid piece of an undeniable reality. He closes his hand around it, the polished steel a cold comfort. In this single, mass-produced object, he holds the entire story. The vastness of the enemy, the fragility of his own nation, and the end of the age of the warrior. The triumphant flags over Singapore, the glorious victories, the dream of a new empire, all of it has become a ghost in this hangar. The war has just begun, but for the man holding the enemy's heart in his hand, it is already over. The drone of the bombers recedes into the memory of the storm, leaving a silence in the hangar that is no longer empty, but filled with the weight of a concluded argument. Kenji Tanaka stands motionless, the cool, dense steel of the piston a grounding point in a world that has just been unmade. In his hand he holds not just a piece of an enemy engine, but the final, irrefutable word in a debate between spirit and substance. The hangar, once a temple dedicated to the art of the machine, has become a quiet mausoleum for a beautiful idea. The war for the skies would be fought for 3 more years, but here in this circle of lamplight, surrounded by the bones of a single engine, it had already been decided. The future was not a matter of will, it was a matter of inventory. History rarely unfolds in a single dramatic moment of revelation. More often it is a slow, creeping tide, its advance measured in quiet rooms by men whose warnings are lost in the clamor of war. Kenji Tanaka's discovery was one such moment, a silent prophecy delivered in the language of engineering. The number he wrote on that blackboard, 30,000, was a ghost that would haunt the skies of the Pacific. It would manifest in the endless waves of Hellcats and Corsairs, and in the devastating firestorms that would later consume the wooden cities of his homeland. He had been sent to find the secret to the enemy's strength, and he had succeeded. The tragedy was that the secret was not a technique to be copied, but a scale of existence that could only be endured. He saw the end from the very beginning. The conflict was never truly between the elegant A6M0 and the rugged Hawker Hurricane. It was a collision of two fundamentally different philosophies, a war between the artisan's workshop and the assembly line. Japan had wagered its destiny on the belief that a single, perfectly crafted sword, wielded by a warrior of unparalleled spirit, could defeat a legion. But the Merlin engine taught Kenji a brutal modern lesson. The enemy's strength was not in the unique soul of its machines, but in their profound soullessness. It was found in their interchangeability, their modularity, their sheer overwhelming numbers. The Allies were not forging swords. They were casting an unending river of hammers, and the tragic beauty of the single sword is that it can only be broken once. The fate of Kenji Tanaka himself is not recorded in the grand annals of the war. He did not become a hero or a traitor. He became something far more tragic, a man burdened by an inconvenient truth. He returned to Japan, a Cassandra of logistics, his reports filled with stark numbers and warnings about material deficits that were dismissed by a high command, intoxicated with early victories and the doctrine of spiritual power. He was a man who had looked into the heart of the enemy and found not a monster to be slain, but a mirror reflecting his own nation's limitations. His greatest intellectual achievement became his most profound personal isolation. Forced to watch the future he had calculated on a dusty blackboard unfold with mathematical, heartbreaking precision. In the end, the story of this single engine, dissected in the humid darkness of a conquered city, reveals a timeless and uncomfortable law of modern conflict. The soul of total war is not found in the courage of the pilot or the genius of the designer. It is found in the cold, brutal arithmetic of the factory floor. It is a lesson written in steel, measured in alloys and counted in serial numbers. A single perfect machine is an inspiration, a work of art. But 30,000 good ones are a historical fact, an unstoppable force of reality. If you believe this story reveals a truth about how the modern world is truly shaped, share the number that held the key to it all: 30,000. The hangar at RAF Seletar no longer stands. The blackboard has long since been wiped clean, and the engine parts were likely melted down, their secrets scattered to the winds of time. But the truth uncovered there remains. It is a quiet reminder that the most significant battles are often won years before the first shot is fired, not on the battlefield, but in the mines, the foundries, and on the drafting tables of engineers who understand the grim poetry of scale. For the future is not always heralded by the roar of cannons or the proclamations of emperors. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet click of a micrometer, revealing a truth so vast and absolute that it changes the world forever.